Hello, and welcome to the Responsive Family Sleep Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Hawley, holistic sleep coach, lactation consultant, peaceful parenting educator, and mom. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by all the conflicting sleep info, frustrated with sleep information that just plain felt wrong, or searched desperately for a truly gentle and responsive sleep approach, then you are in the right place. In each episode, we'll be answering your most pressing baby and toddler sleep questions, busting those sleep myths, and helping you understand truly developmental, biologically normal baby and toddler sleep, plus encouraging you to trust your intuition along the way. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited to have this conversation today about maternal exhaustion and overstimulation. And goodness, I feel like I deal with this with so many of my clients. And so when I connected with Sara, who's a coach that works with moms, more from the wellness perspective, I was like, this is it. We got to talk about this because it's just such a struggle, right? And so, Sara, thank you so much for being here with me today and having this conversation.
Hi, Kim. Thank you so much for having me. You do such impactful work with educating and empowering moms on all things baby and toddler sleep. So I'm so happy to be here to talk with you today.
Awesome. So let's start off with sharing a little bit about your work and who you are, and we will then jump in to the topic.
Of course. So I'm a certified health and wellness coach who specializes in helping moms physically and mentally rebalance from all the physiological changes that happen postpartum and throughout motherhood. So, more specifically, I help moms improve their energy, overstimulation, overwhelm, fulfillment, fertility, weight management, and much more so they can thrive in motherhood.
So needed. Gosh, postpartum, birth, pregnancy, like that whole like perinatal period really does a number on you as as a person, right? And I feel like we don't honor that space, that transition, all the things that the perinatal time does to your body, and what it takes to sort of replenish yourself after that time.
Exactly. I mean, it's such a natural process where, a lot of women think, oh, my body will just know what to do. And, I don't need to do anything special or give, extra attention to it. It'll just work itself out. But there's just so many factors that go into it and so much we can be doing to help ourselves feel better and really enjoy the whole motherhood experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, the thing about recovering and healing during the, I don't know, the baby time, right? Like the first year postpartum, and even beyond is like you're learning so many new things. You are tired, you are healing from birth, you're healing from pregnancy, and then you're totally in charge of this tiny human who's entirely dependent on you, who disrupts your sleep, and it's a lot, right? And so, a core part of my approach is really lines up with this because it is that we can't just look to quote unquote fix the baby, right? We can't make babies sleep the way we want as the only way to support yourself and your own sleep and your own rest, as a new parent. And it's just, I love how that lined up with your work about, supporting energy levels and exhaustion and overstimulation because that's such a piece for so many parents.
Absolutely. I mean, the many struggles and stressors in motherhood, such as those related to your child's sleep, can be way more complicated and challenging when moms are also feeling that exhaustion and overstimulation. So, I mean, it can feel like you can't seem to get out of that state of overwhelm long enough to take on what feels like that impossible task of getting your child's sleep on track.
Yeah.
And also having the capacity to be resilient through that process. So there's definitely a connection between, maternal health and wellness and how empowered and equipped a mom can feel in addressing their child's sleep.
Yeah, and I don't know if you see this with your clients. I see it a lot with my clients. Just that, like, when we look towards our child's sleep as the answer to our exhaustion, right? We miss pieces because, obviously a baby waking you up or a toddler waking you up disrupts your sleep. Like that's kind of no doubt, right? Like that's an obvious. But we tend to overlook the fact that there are other factors that affect your sleep quality and your rest and your energy levels that are not just about your baby waking or how long it takes to resettle them, that are
Yes.
actually more in your control than, what's going on with your baby. And so I feel like we have this really narrow, societally acceptable way to talk about sleep and exhaustion and energy levels when there's actually, like you were saying, so it's such a broader conversation of things that are actually just grown up, like parent specific, mom specific,
Right.
that are part of the picture.
That is such a great point because it can be so frustrating when you're wanting to change things that aren't totally in your control.
Yes.
And so it's very refreshing to realize how much is in your control. And if you're taking that holistic approach, you do realize that there are so many opportunities to feel better in other areas.
Yeah, absolutely. So from like the wellness side of things, right? When we're thinking about like most parents are tired, most parents experience a bit of feeling touched out or, a little overstimulation when a baby's crying. So how do you conceptualize like kind of what's typical, what's like signs that there's some more going on? How do you kind of see that spectrum or that balance?
Yes, and that is a very important distinction to make. The expectation is not for you to never feel tired or overstimulated in motherhood. That's just not realistic.
Hmm.
And just because you feel that way every now and then does not by itself mean that your body is struggling or needs extra support. It's very natural. So it is helpful to know the difference between, what is quote normal versus normal exhaustion and overstimulation versus what might be more chronic or complex exhaustion and overstimulation that could benefit from some targeted attention.
Hmm.
So when we're looking at exhaustion, we'll start there. Signs and symptoms of what would be, normal exhaustion in motherhood would be, occasionally feeling really tired or like it's been a really long day and you just can't wait to go to bed that night, or feeling that occasional exhaustion, but still being able to recover somewhat quickly, whether that's, the next day or after a tough week, but you're generally able to bounce back a bit. On the flip side, signs and symptoms of maybe, benefiting from more targeted attention would be a physical exhaustion where you just crash and feel like you barely have the energy to move or play with your child or entertain them, for the full day. And also feeling like everything is just a lot of effort and maybe things that wouldn't normally be a lot of effort for you. And then also just constantly feeling like you're trying to find the energy to make it through the day. So
Hmm.
those would be, especially if you're feeling that often, those would be signs of, more of a chronic or complex situation where you might want to think about some changes that you could make, to feel better.
Yeah, oh my
For
gosh,
over,
sorry, that was totally
no,
me
go
after
ahead.
my youngest was born. I swear my adrenals crashed. I mean, I have some thyroid issues and they were flaring up, and I just remember she was my better sleeper. She slept better than my oldest. Um, I was so tired. Like you can feel that kind of
Yeah,
exhaustion in your bones. It's just so ugh. No, it's
you
so different
can. Yeah,
than like, oh, I'm tired. My kiddo had a bad night. Is one kind of exhaustion. And then this like, I don't know, it's just so deep and like weary and just I don't know. I could feel it in my bones. That's the only way I can think to describe it. It was
absolutely.
so awful.
That's such a great description. And I think, each person is in tune with their own body, right? Like they know what's normal for them or what's not normal. And so if you're feeling like this is a lot, like I've never been so chronically tired like this and that physical exhaustion that you're describing, Kim, like that's a classic sign. And it's super important to listen to your body. And it can make things even worse too if you are looking on social media and seeing these accounts with, moms who are just going above and beyond and doing all these
Uh-huh.
activities with their kids and creating, arts and crafts for them and you're like, how I can't even function. Like I can't even, make it through the day. It can feel like that sometimes. So,
Yeah.
I won't go off on that tangent, but it can be a lot to see that, on social media or to feel like you should feel a certain way and you're
Hmm.
not feeling that way. It can just add to, the stress and frustration. So
Yeah,
just know you're
absolutely.
certainly not alone, if you feel that way.
I want to layer on the overstimulation piece because
Hmm.
I find this piece fascinating as someone who regularly gets overstimulated by my kids from like they're just loud and I get easily noise overstimulated. And I remember distinctly, I don't know whose account it was. It's someone I follow, probably an OT or somebody who
Hmm.
first like put it into like sensory overstimulation terms to me and I was like, "Oh my God, that's it for me." Like my kids are so loud. They're like 7 and 12 now, so they're still so loud. And I'm like, and I just want quiet. But I find that like that piece is so much worse when you're tired, but also it like hits parents in different ways. Like some it's the constant touch of babies, some it's like me, the noise and chaos of toddlers or big kids. I'd love to hear you
Right.
kind of talk about that piece, kind of overlaying and beside the exhaustion piece.
Absolutely. So you're spot on. So for overstimulation, signs and symptoms of, normal moments of overstimulation would be that occasional feeling of on edge or like you just need a break from the chaos. Totally
Hmm.
normal. Also feeling that occasional overstimulation, but still overall feeling in control of your emotions and
Yeah.
sense of calm, and still feeling an overall sense of resilience in motherhood. Whereas, if it's a bit more extreme, something that, may warrant more targeted attention would be if you're feeling more on edge pretty consistently or overwhelmed by things that you normally like wouldn't be, or
Hmm.
being more reactive or sensitive to things like tantrums. So rather than being able to stay in that state of, more so being unbothered by that, you're more reactive. And that would be exactly what you were talking about with, you know, any, touching or noises and like those type of stimulants,
Hmm.
being more reactive to those. And then also even just persistent or frequent feelings of stress, overwhelm, burnout, or even irritability or agitation would be
Hmm.
signs of that.
I love that link to like feeling agitated or angry or like reactive as overstimulation because I feel like a lot of times people don't connect those, right? That you're really just overwhelmed and overstimulated and it's coming out more in anger or agitation or that reactivity. But
Mhm.
looking a little bit deeper to find those causes.
Absolutely. I mean, your body is literally just, it does not have the capacity to take on anymore. And so it definitely affects your patience, um, your ability to process things,
Mhm.
as rationally or as calmly as you normally would. Your body's just in overdrive, and it's not your fault. And that can certainly be an outcome, is that irritability and agitation.
Yeah. I love that you brought both of these back to resiliency, right? That like we're all going to be overstimulated or overwhelmed or exhausted from time to time, right? We don't need to put our expectations that we're never going to feel that way because it's going to set us up to struggle and to fail and to feel bad. Well, to not to feel like we're failing, not to actually fail. Um, but that resiliency, right? Like I was saying, my kids still totally overstimulate me, right? Because they are loud, like seriously. But I have tools, right? Like, and I can remove myself from the situation. I can start to block them out. I can send them outside, like all these tools. That A, because they're big kids and not not tiny, but also because I've found those tools like for myself over the years. Like my I have a neighbor friend, she puts in earplugs, and I that's not my tool, but it works beautifully for her. Very loud kids. She's also introvert and gets more overstimulated sound wise. So I
Yeah,
just love that kind of feeling like we're all going to have these moments, but it's the resiliency and the ability to kind of not have them take over. Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I love that you make that point about finding what works well for you. Because similar to everyone having, a different manifestation of overstimulation in terms of what symptoms they're feeling from that, what's going to help them is very different as well. So, really tapping into what makes you feel better in the moment and what are the tools that you can have in your toolkit to leverage.
I love that because we can't control, like we can't control all the things that lead to exhaustion and overstimulation. Like a really fussy baby who has digestive discomfort is going to maybe need to be held all the time and they're going to cry more and they're going to wake more because they're uncomfortable. And all of that is going to make contribute to being more exhausted and for some parents feeling more overstimulated, right? But there's like pieces you can control in there and there's pieces that you can't necessarily control or can't immediately change. And I love the idea that you can like look for pieces, look for tools, but also look for pieces that you can support yourself better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So when we were chatting ahead of this podcast, you mentioned the bucket theory. And I'd
Yes.
love to hear a little bit more about that and how this sort of applies to what we've been chatting about.
Absolutely. The bucket theory is a really great visual for our body's energy and resources versus the stressors and demands that it's under. So to, give a quick explanation of the bucket theory, the bucket represents your body's capacity to handle and appropriately respond to physical and mental demands and stressors and its ability to function optimally. So, every activity, behavior, mindset that you engage in that depletes your body's energy and resources to function optimally causes that bucket's contents to increase. Sometimes it's just a slight increase, sometimes it could be a really big increase. Alternatively, every activity, behavior, or mindset that you engage in that replenishes your body's energy or resources to function optimally can cause that bucket's contents to decrease and give it some reprieve. So if we are not getting a handle on, you know, the intense physical and mental demands of motherhood and aren't doing what we can to give our body extra support, it's very likely that your bucket could overflow and that you're going to be seeing some symptoms come from that. So every mom's symptoms will look a little different, like we've already discussed. But for example, if you're already feeling that frequent exhaustion and overstimulation, that is a sign that your bucket is already overflowing. So the idea is to address this and enable yourself to feel better. The goal is to identify ways to adjust your lifestyle behaviors and mindset in a way that will increase that replenishment that you're providing to your body while also minimizing all the factors that could be draining your body's resilience. And, as we discussed, the great thing about this theory and approach is you don't have to be perfect in every area to see
That
huge improvements. That's the best part. You can just focus on what is in your control to lighten your overall load. And that way, your body ends up with the bandwidth and the capacity to actually handle and appropriately respond to the challenges that are out of your control.
I love that. And that actually really lines up with the way that I work, right? Where we want to look at all the areas we can control, that we can influence, that we can impact, that are going to help you feel better rested, right? And there are pieces that are out of our control, there are pieces that are in our control. And it is just as much about what you do as the parent as it is about how your baby is sleeping. And I just, no one's perfect. And we're all going to do things that
Yeah,
maybe aren't the most optimal, but figuring out where it feels sustainable to make things more optimal or support ourselves better or have better sleep hygiene or, what have you.
for sure. And that sustainable piece that you mentioned is really key as well, because if we're trying to do something, make an extreme change and it's just not sustainable or it's too quick or big of a change, it can be really defeating feeling because not only are you, not able to sustain it potentially, but you also feel defeated that you weren't able to sustain it. So
Yeah.
spot on. Like the key is finding ways to make small, incremental, feasible, and sustainable changes. And that's going to make the biggest difference over time.
I love that. So let's pretend I'm a tired parent who's feeling overstimulated and overwhelmed. Obviously, there, like as we've discussed, there's so much that is individual here about what you should do. But like, what advice would you give about how to start reflecting on this and where maybe could be some quick wins or places to think about making some
Yeah.
shifts?
So, for sure, as we've mentioned, taking a holistic approach is really important. I think a lot of people go straight to diet and exercise,
Hmm.
and those are really important factors, definitely not discounting that. But there are a lot of other areas too that will give opportunities to make those changes and to feel better. And additionally, there may be factors in your diet, even the diet and exercise areas that you could be doing something that you think is going to be really helping when in reality it could actually be making things worse. And I'll give an example because a common theme here, especially with the overstimulation piece, is nervous system dysregulation.
Hmm.
And if you are experiencing that and you're also working on your diet and exercise, if you are eating too few calories and exercising too much, you might think you're being healthy. Maybe you're trying to also lose weight simultaneously, and so those are some approaches that you're trying to take. But doing that when specifically looking at nervous system dysregulation, not eating enough and exercising too much can actually make things worse because your body is already drowning, so to speak. It
Hmm.
needs it needs the energy and the nutrients. So it actually probably needs, you know, either more calories or more nutritious calories. So being smarter with your calories to really help support the body's functioning. And same with exercise. If you are, exercising too hard, that's putting more stress on the body and it's not allowing the nervous system to relax and reset.
I love
So
that.
so there's clearly, so many avenues we can take here in terms of where to start. But I would say as a general piece of advice, just thinking through your day-to-day activities and almost putting them into two categories. Like, is this helping my body? Is this nourishing my body? Is this helping my body rejuvenate? Or is it stressing my body out? Is it draining my body? Um,
Hmm.
is it giving, we talk about toxic load as well, but is it, hindering my body's ability to function optimally because it's introducing these maybe more toxic or limiting factors? And doing what you can in those areas to flip the script if needed. So trying to move more things into uh, the bucket of giving your body more energy and resources and trying to minimize those more negative factors.
I love that. I love that way of kind of thinking about what is this doing? Is it helping or is it harming, for lack of a better word? Just I can think of so many things that I see that I try to help shift with the parents that I'm working with. And like you mentioned social media scrolling earlier, and I find especially with sleep, because sleep is so, I mean, contradictory, fear manipulative come to mind with the sleep industry as a whole. And so often I'm counseling parents like, you've picked your path. Start unfollowing accounts. Like you do not need this negativity making you doubt yourself and stressing you out and sending you into anxiety spirals. Like it's not helpful and it's harmful, right? And so that one is definitely where I'm like, be mindful of who you're following. Like you don't owe anybody your brain space. If they're not adding to your parenting experience, they aren't lifting you up, then why are you letting them bring you down? Kind of like why are we letting them into your space?
I love that. I love that because the, you know, I talk with my clients too about, your relationships, your community.
Yes.
Where are you putting your energy?
Yep.
What are you exposing yourself to? And that social media component is so important. I love that that's something that you focus on as well.
Yep. And that boundary setting with like family and friends who need to overshare their opinions about how you're parenting. I'm like, it's a good time to practice boundary setting, right? Like,
Yes, yes.
um, and for me and my clients, it's also we do a lot of sleep hygiene work with grown-ups, right? Because most people don't actually have very good sleep hygiene, and we can kind of get away
Yes.
with it until you have a baby who is supposed to wake at night to a certain extent, right? Like they do have needs at night. And so there are often tweaks that we can make to support better restful sleep, right? To have a better melatonin release, to set yourself up to have a more strong and stable circadian rhythm and improve the quality and how quickly you can fall back asleep, after you feed your baby at night or resettle them.
Amazing. I love that because it also capitalizes on that idea of, okay, we can't necessarily fully change this other factor that's not 100% in our control, but we can learn how to work with our own bodies. And,
Mhm.
those sleep hygiene techniques that you're sharing, I'm sure are super beneficial.
Yeah, and I like to think about it like, and maybe you do as well, I don't know. Becoming a parent is this great opportunity to just generally assess some of the things that we're doing. Not that we can do, like you're saying, not big overdramatic changes, but like, you know, when you don't have dependence, you can just get away with a lot of stuff that was not healthy then. It wasn't particularly supporting you, but you had the resiliency and the cope to just like, whatever, I can stay up till midnight and get up at, 6 in the morning and it's fine. Um, but that wasn't necessarily healthy, right? To be on your screen and out and bright lights and all these things that we like know are not good for your sleep. And then you really can't do that with a young child. And so I see it as this like really lovely time that you can actually be like, what, these are things that are good for my body outside of this time now, like now and outside of this time. But now it really matters because I have this whole other person I'm in charge of, this whole tiny human that I need to keep
Exactly.
alive and thriving.
Exactly. You're right. I mean, you go from this state of, like you said, it was never healthy, but your body was able to recover and to handle it. And now when you add in all these other factors that, in motherhood, both from the physical changes and the life changes from now
Mhm.
taking care of this human, your body struggles more. It's just there's more going on, there's more it has to overcome. And we see that also with, other physical symptoms too. Like some moms will have these new challenges postpartum that they've never had before. Like they're seeing changes in their digestion. Maybe they're now sensitive to foods that they didn't used to be, or they're
Mhm.
having skin changes. It can manifest in so many different ways, but it's super common to be noticing new things in motherhood that maybe you've never struggled with before.
Yeah, because there's so much shifting, just like physiologically, the hormone shifts, the nutrient depletion. Like there's just so much there, and then so much from the like identity side and the mental health side, and
Yes,
Ooh.
so much.
Are there any other like common areas or patterns you see that you think that moms should just be aware of or reflect on, or things to be on the lookout for as they're looking kind of around at their days, their daily patterns, and thinking, what can I what should I be aware of that might be sneaking up and kind of hiding in plain sight, or doing to shift and support myself better?
Yeah. So we've talked about the nervous system dysregulation one.
Hmm.
So, anything that's causing extreme stress or mental clutter. Um, and we talked about, not exercising too much and making sure that you're eating enough. And also making sure you're eating enough, nutritious, whole foods, non-inflammatory foods, eating the right things.
Hmm.
Also, thinking about, gut health and inflammation, because, this is kind of what I was saying with the food sensitivities potentially popping up, is your body might not be able to process those more inflammatory foods as well as it used to. Excuse me. And you may be accumulating more inflammation through, if you have an unhealthy diet and even foods that you might think are healthy or might be considered healthy for the average person could be causing inflammation, which is, different for everyone, but could be things like gluten, dairy, eggs. Everyone might have their own sensitivities. And also thinking about lifestyle balance. And a common thing we see with moms is, they become moms, and rightfully so, they're just 100% focused on their child, and they put all their energy and attention into that mom role. And that is super exciting and fulfilling, but it could also leave them feeling like they've had a loss of identity or unfulfilled in other areas of their life,
Yeah.
and maybe feeling like other areas of their life have been put on hold. So that's something to consider too, is, how do I feel about my life holistically in all areas of me as an individual? You also mentioned the depleted nutrient stores, which is a huge factor. Pregnancy and breastfeeding are huge nutrient depleters because
Hmm.
our bodies are very wisely giving our child first dibs, at all the nutrients to help support their growth and development, and you're getting what's left. So again, really thinking about what you're putting into your body and if you can improve that in any way. And then one final thing that I did touch on earlier is that toxic load. So think about, what are you putting on your body? What are you putting in your body? And also, what environments are you in? So, what's around your body that could have a toxic effect? So, that could be endocrine disruptors and skincare products. It could be, unfiltered water. It could be a hostile work environment or toxic relationships. So thinking about that social aspect as well as the products you're using can be helpful as well.
Oh, I love that. That's such an important piece. I feel like doesn't always get as much attention.
Mhm.
So I feel like there's a lot of things that a parent, a mom could explore, looking to shift small things. But do you have any thoughts, like in the moment when you are exhausted and overstimulated? Do you have any like coping suggestions?
I actually have a free resource on exactly that.
Oh, I just led right into that. Wait, we were going to talk about that at the end. Like, go for
Yeah,
it.
there are definitely coping skills in the moment because we're talking about there's two different things here, right? So there's what you can be doing for your lifestyle overall to help minimize the effects of, feeling that way. So whether that means you're not feeling that way as much or the intensity is less. So there's ways to, there's an approach for that, but there's also an approach for in the moment, because
Hmm.
that's the hardest part, right? Is
Yes.
when you're in it, it's really hard to pull yourself out and to reset. So I actually have a free resource that I'd love to offer your
Yeah,
audience that
definitely.
can walk through 3 steps to help in those moments. And it also includes examples of how to apply each step and how, like, what the positive impacts are on the nervous system for each one. So
I
it's
love
called
that.
the Overstimulated Mom's 3-Step Guide to Reclaim Resilience in Moments of Overwhelm.
I love that. I feel like I totally glanced at that before we started recording, and I didn't even mean to lean into that with that question. But I mean, that's perfect because that gives folks a chance to download that and reflect on it a bit. Because those are the hardest moments where you're so overstimulated, but you also still have to show up because you're a mom and you have a baby and a toddler, or a toddler, and you have to be there, especially like when they are the one overstimulating you.
Right.
But it's not like a party overstimulates me so I can leave early, right? It's like this is a
Right.
child. You can't just step out of that responsibility in that moment necessarily. And so, um,
Right.
yeah, it's tough.
Another great thing is the steps in there also help you feel reconnected with your child. So, which is especially important for what you just mentioned. You can't always just walk away or distance yourself to take a breather. Um, so, these steps will also help in moments where you need to, be with your child and overcome that feeling. It can be really helpful.
Yeah, no, that's great because then you're feeling really overstimulated, especially when it's caused by your baby. I'm to that, but it's not meaning to overstimulate you, but like if it's you're feeling touched out, right? Because your baby wouldn't let you put you down and they're really fussy and they're crying a lot and the noise is overstimulating, the touch is overstimulating. You just want your body to yourself, for a few minutes, but you cannot necessarily do that right now. Um,
Yeah.
it's really disconnecting, like you can really lose sight of the fact of that empathy for where your baby's at in this whole situation. And so I
Yes.
love that kind of reconnecting piece that it's like, yes, we need to calm your nervous system and we need to help you recenter, but also like remember, remind, lean into that relational connection piece.
Absolutely.
I love that. Any sort of as we wrap up, any last sort of thoughts or takeaways you want moms to leave this conversation with as they're thinking about coping and supporting their own exhaustion and overwhelm and overstimulation?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, have hope in the fact that you have a lot more power over your health and wellness and your motherhood experience than you may think. And going through this, holistic process of finding ways to support your body can make a huge difference. So I hope that this conversation has been, very positive and reassuring and giving you hope that you can feel better. Um, that being said, it can definitely be a lot to think about and can feel overwhelming to take on that task of
Yes.
figuring out what your, unique contributors are and what's going to be, a great solution for you when you already feel exhausted and overstimulated. It can be hard to find that time and energy when you're in the thick of things. So this is exactly what I specialize in helping moms do, and motherhood health and wellness coaching is super impactful because it utilizes both that holistic approach and a fully personalized approach.
I love that because it's literally what I tell parents about working with a holistic sleep coach, like working with me, is that you're right in the middle of your own patterns and you're tired and um it just that guidance, right? That objective perspective, that ability to look at all the pieces and see the patterns and look at you as an individual is so great. I feel like what you do is so aligned from that a different perspective with
Yes.
with what I do. I love that.
Yes, absolutely. And it's also so fun to see it click. Like once you identify those ways for you as an individual to feel better, it's almost one of those situations where you're like, "Of course. Yes, like why did I not think of this before?" And everything falls into place and it's just really rewarding and fun to see.
I love that. So obviously, everyone's going to go download your download because that sounds like such an awesome free guide and walking you through the steps. But where else can folks find you to check out your work and follow your content?
Absolutely. So, the best way to get in touch with me or to learn more about how I support moms is to go to my website. It's www.notablywell.com. So, that's NOTABLYWELL. And you can also follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Notably Well. And I also offer free discovery calls. So if you're considering working together or want to discuss further, ask questions, you're welcome to book a free call with me. The link is on my website, but I believe it will also be included in the show notes.
Yes, I think you
Yeah,
gave it to me.
amazing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I love it, and I love how much it lines up and overlaps and intersects with the way that I support parents, and I love the wellness stuff. It's so important. So thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, I agree. This has been so fun to chat and I love connecting with other women who support moms, especially holistically. So this has been great and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode left you feeling more informed, confident, and encouraged on your sleep journey. And just a reminder before you go that nothing in this episode is individualized to your specific sleep situation, nor is it to be taken as medical advice. Take what resonates, ignore what doesn't, and check with your healthcare provider about any medical concerns. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast so that you'll never miss an episode. And take a moment to rate, review, or share an episode you love on social media. All of that helps parents just like you find me, this podcast, and this gentle and responsive sleep information. I'll see you next time.